So I know that the church, it started in Sao Paulo, and then later it kind of started getting up into the north. So my mission was actually in the northeastern corner, like the furthest point you can get out. People talk about, they would joke about jumping from the edge of Brazil over to the tip of Africa over there, just because it was like the furthest part out. Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of like right on the coast, but it was also pretty tropical, especially the further into the mission you go, more inland. It was really hot, like I said, but yeah, the culture, there are lots, there's lots of diversity there, because just kind of the same as the U.S., I know that they had like lots of slave trades and stuff like that, and so there's a lot of African Brazilians then just that live in that area. There's also lots of Japanese, actually. I know that they were originally going to Sao Paulo, but there's a lot more Japanese and like Asian descent in the Northeast as well. So I remember thinking that there weren't going to be any white people, but there actually were a lot of white people too. So lots of diversity. That was super fun. I know that right now, or when I left, so it's been 2.5 years, they had, if I'm correct, 4 stakes in Joao Pessoa, which is the capital of Paraíba, which is the state there. And at the time, the mission was actually 2 states. So it's Paraíba and Rio Grande do Norte. But now it's actually split. So now it's the Joao Pessoa mission and the Natal mission. So that might make a little bit of a difference, but it was a pretty big mission. It usually took about 8 or 9 hours on a bus to get out to like the furthest area. So there are lots of different places. If you were in the city, then you'd get a lot of really wealthy people that were a little more, maybe more educated and more similar to like maybe working in the U.S. But then right out of the big cities, then it already gets pretty ghetto, I guess you could say, rural. The people there are probably the poorest in the country, in Brazil, probably just because of like that slavery and everything that was going on there. It was more of like a farming place, kind of like I'd probably say the South in the U.S. Probably not quite as developed even as like the Western United States or the Northeast. So I actually served in a couple of different kinds of wards. My first area was just outside of one of the big cities. It was called Natal, but I was on the north side of that. And there, the church was pretty big in comparison to the rest of the mission. So usually there was about like 60 members, or families. So usually like we'd fill the whole chapel. They would never have to fill out into the overflow or anything like that. But it was definitely one of the bigger wards that I'd been to. The next ward that I went to, I actually served in the office for 8.5 months as the secretary to the president. And there we were in like the richest area of the mission, just because that's where the mission home is and everything. So there the ward was actually very strong. And it was bigger than probably most of the areas. They were the most wealthy, so they would help in different ways, like because they had cars, so they could drive us around or go and pick up investigators and stuff like that. Where in other areas, it was harder. You'd have to walk out or have someone walk out and bring an investigator. But then I also served in a very small little town where there was maybe 20 members, and the only priesthood holders were like the bishopric and the elder quorum president. So it was a really, really small branch. But that place was also my favorite area because the people were a lot more humble there. They were a lot more likely to let you in and let you talk to them. And so we actually did really well there when I got to that area. And so there were lots of miracles there. So I had just gotten out. I was in the office for 8.5 months. And so a lot of the work that I was doing was with the missionaries and making sure that they had what they needed to do the work. And we always leave about 5 p.m. to go out, and we'd teach until 9. So we still had our own area to take care of. But as a secretary, it's kind of a 24-hour job, and it's really busy. And I don't think people realize how much the office elders work. But yeah, it was probably the most I like had to work, like hard work on the mission, just because it was 24 hours, responding to emails, phone calls. We were in charge of like numbers, or making sure that we were ordering all of the materials for the mission. We'd also submit all of the baptismal records into Salt Lake and things like that. So there were lots of organizational things that we were doing to make sure that the whole mission was running the way it should have been. So after that, though, I was so excited to get out, just because it was like I didn't have to worry about all that. I could just focus on trying to bring people to the gospel and to the Lord. And so I was super excited. So when I got out, I got assigned to this little town, and I was just on fire. Like, I was so excited to get out. And what we did the first day, I was finishing up the training of an elder, which was also actually my favorite time. So I was in my favorite area doing my favorite thing, which was training, because it's just a blast teaching a new elder, and they bring a new energy to the mission and stuff, so it's super fun. We looked through, there was like at least 100 names of people in the area book, and also just people in my trainees planner. And so we went through, and we just we talked about each of the people that he knew, and we decided we grouped people out into different areas, and we're like, okay, so we're going to go to this area this day and make sure that we hit all these people, and just, give them one more chance, or, things like that. And it turned out really successful. We were able to bring a lot of people from that group to church, and they started progressing. The biggest miracle that happened in that area was, it was the first week we went out to this family that was being taught. And so we went down, and we were teaching this 19-year-old and his mom, and some of his cousins were around. And we started teaching them, and the spirit was really strong there. It just felt, he just started soaking it up a lot, this 19-year-old. And he started coming to church, and he wanted to be baptized. That first lesson, we were just teaching him, and we taught him about the restoration, and we talked about baptism and the importance of it. And he was just like, okay, like, when can I get baptized? We were like, this is awesome, because you always kind of hope that the work will go like that you'll get these people that are just like, oh, I want to be baptized tomorrow. But a lot of the time, it's a lot more of a process. So this was kind of a miracle. And he was the key to our success, I think, in that area. Using him as a recent member, we were able to baptize his mom later, and that was because of the work that he was doing. I mean, we were going in and giving the lessons and connecting with them and everything, but really what he was doing so much as a member. And we baptized a lot of his cousins, and we kind of went, and his family was huge out in that town, and we just started bringing them all in. And so by the time I left, then the ward was a lot bigger. We had a lot more priesthood members, and the ward had probably doubled in size, or the branch, and they were considering making it a ward. Actually, I would love to go back and see what it's like right now, and see if it's continued to grow, or if they were able to make it a ward, or get a church building out there, or different things. It was such a blast, just because of the miracles that were happening, and it just these things that seemed to just be kind of falling in our lap. That it was awesome, but it was just interesting and humbling that a lot of the work was being done by the members. The members were so humble and so excited to do the work, and so as we used them was when we had so much success. And so I think that's probably why it was my favorite area. It was just a good time, and I only had 6 months left of my mission, so I was just really wanted and real strong, and it was a dream come true. It was good. So I left for my mission in July of 2011, and then I got home right at the end of June of 2013. My first area was an area called Santarém, and that was, like I said, it was in the north of one of the big cities called Natal. And so this is what you'd probably call like a favela, which is like basically like the ghetto of like the city. Then right after that, I got transferred to the area right next to it, and that was called Nova República. And so I actually stayed in the same house, and it was the same church building and everything. It was just the area right next to it. And that was actually really cool because I got to know that whole area around in there, and I got to know the 2 wards that went to that building and everything. So then I went to a ward called Tohi, which is in Joao Pessoa. And that was where I was in the office, and I was there for 8.5 months. Because usually they like keeping the secretaries there for a long time because it's a lot of training. It takes at least a month usually to train the new elders because there's a lot of work to do. And so then the president likes to keep them there, and with good reason, because you don't want to have to keep that many elders training and doing different things like that. So it is a lot better to just keep those elders there. So then I went to this small little town where I just loved it. It was called Açu, and I was there for 3 transfers, and then I ended my mission in Cidade Jardim, which is back in Joao Pessoa, but it was a different stake, and it was the other side of Joao Pessoa. So it's still a semi-rich area, but there were also favelas and different things there, so that ghetto area. Natal was up in that other state, and then I was down in Joao Pessoa, and then Açu was like way out, and it was the hottest area in the mission probably. It was really, really hot and so much fun.